Kong Jie. Silly pillar, please take care of these wounded soldiers. Stop it. It's said to be taking care of you, but in fact, it's just asking me to train for you for free. Li Yunlong said, silly pillar, we are old friends. I have already reserved these soldiers under your command in advance. If you tell the brigade commander that, he agrees and I have no objection. Ding Wei. Silly pillar, can I borrow a few soldiers from you to help me train a reconnaissance team? Is that okay? Borrow it. I'm afraid they won't be able to come back if they lend it out, right? Soul pierces through the shining sword of time and space, becoming a village guardian nicknamed Silly Pillar. To fulfill the oath of protecting the country and protecting the home, we will establish village militia to protect the environment and ensure the safety of the people. Wait for the stability of our homeland before resolutely joining the war against Japan and defending our country. Sword as the main storyline, interspersed with indelible titles, Militia Gu Erden, and other anti-Japanese war movies and TV dramas. We sincerely request your support for the upcoming military battle. Keywords of the novel. Sword of Glory. Defending the country with no pop-ups, download the complete collection of Sword of Glory. Defending the Country TXT, read the latest chapters of Sword of Glory. Defending the Country with no pop-ups. Chapter 1. Village Guardians in Yang Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Village Guardians in Yang Village. Seeing the 8th Root Army, dressed in a khaki military uniform and just stationed in the village, squatting at the village entrance and watching the lively scene, Yang Tieju's expression appeared somewhat bewildered. Fortunately, his expression was similar to what it is now, and the villagers nearby couldn't notice anything. Listening to the villagers chatting, Yang Tieju's expression became increasingly eerie. Fortunately, the villagers didn't want to stay with him, otherwise they would definitely be surprised by his expression. How could it be like opening a dyeing workshop, changing colors in a while? Nonsense. The independent regiment of the 8th Root Army, with its leader still surnamed Kong, actually calls the village where Laozi is located Yang Village. Is it a sword? It has been almost a week since his soul penetrated into the village, and when he first woke up, he was still a bit confused. Just when he found out that the guy with soul piercing was actually the defender of Yang Village, and it was still during the anti-Japanese war, he didn't feel good anymore. Yang Taiju, who came from later generations and has read many travel novels, said speechlessly, I'm just tired of killing and want to live an ordinary life. Why can't God always live with me? Sigh, my heart is tired. The so-called village guardians mostly refer to people who are not bad-hearted, a bit foolish, and even a bit crazy. They know all the big and small things in the village, and they will actively help with the red and white events in the village. As long as they give stuttering, they will not be regarded as normal people. It is said that the village guardian comes from the world to practice hard. He can help the village overcome disasters and difficulties, and block all bad luck on himself. The hardships in this life are for the blessings of the future. Generally speaking, villagers are naturally kind, but most of them have 5 drawbacks and 3 deficiencies. The 5 drawbacks refer to being widowed, alone, and disabled, while the 3 deficiencies refer to being short of money, life, and power. So, the life expectancy of village guardians is generally not long, and they are destined to live alone until old age. The alternative in the eyes of others is also easy to be ridiculed by others. The soul pierced through this kind of person, and when Yang Taiju woke up, he had a strong desire to die. After a thorough examination, he found that in the eyes of the villagers, apart from having a dull mind and being a bit silly or stunned, there were no other issues with him. What made him even more heartbroken was that he had 5 siblings of different sizes in the village. Although there is no blood relationship between brothers and sisters. But for now, he is the only adult in this family. The reason why his soul pierced the original owner was also because the old man who adopted the original owner passed away. The original owner, whose head was pounding with energy, seemed unwilling to believe that his adoptive father had passed away. He sat in front of his adoptive father's grave, feeling heartbroken to death. Accepting the memory of the original owner, Ong Taizhu also said helplessly, "Although I'm a bit foolish and a bit stunned, at least I have feelings and righteousness. You left happily, but bringing me over is also considered that kind of thing." Just as Yang Taizhu was daydreaming in his daily life, a villager next to him joked with a smile, "Silly pillar, isn't this military prowess? I've heard others say they're all good at fighting, do you want to go up and compete with them?" As a fellow villager, the villagers know that Yang Taizhu is a silly person, but his strength is very strong, and even his physique is stronger than many of his peers. Anyone who has fought with him knows that he is a foolish person, fighting is as ruthless as risking his life. Fortunately, as long as Yang Taizhu does not actively provoke trouble, he still rarely causes trouble in the village. The most important thing is that although his mind is not bright, he listens very much to his adoptive father. As long as his adoptive father speaks, Yang Taizhu will become obedient. After giving the instigated villagers a glance, Yang Taizhu suddenly stood up and startled them, but he staggered away. He has been in this era for 7 days now and feels that he cannot continue to be so confused every day. No matter what kind of purpose the heavens have thrown him into this time and space, he must at least find a way to survive first. His adoptive father has passed away, and there are still 5 starving siblings who need his care. Relying on the help of the villagers, Yang Taizhu felt it was better not to hold on to too much hope. Nowadays, everyone's life is difficult. Furthermore, if we were to encounter the Japanese puppet army going to the countryside to carry out a crackdown, it is uncertain that they would even provoke murder for no reason. As he walked towards the village, Yang Taizhu quickly remembered the Bright Sword anti-Japanese war drama he had watched several times before crossing over. As the plot unfolded, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Kong Erlengzi, the leader of this group, probably won't be able to serve for a few days. If he is in this time and space, which is the so-called Shining Sword time and space, then the independent regiment entering Yang village will soon face an encounter battle. It is precisely this encounter that has made the independent corps the do in the CEO's mouth. Let's put it this way. Our protagonist is about to appear. Li Yunlong, who knows this, should be embroidering at the bedding factory. Forget it, she's the protagonist, we're just a small character. Let's find a way to solve the problem of eating first. When it comes to the surplus food at home, it can only last for a family for 2 days at most, and it is necessary to eat thin food in a meal. During his 7 days in the village, he spent most of his time daydreaming and relaxing, but when it was time for dinner, his younger siblings would call him home to eat. Alas, in my previous life, I lived for at least 30 years and even had a group of little brats take care of me. I really felt ashamed and panicked. In my previous life, I complained about being alone, but in this life, I have a family, a brother, and a sister. I should be happy. Accept my fate. Yang Taizhu, who had made up his mind and was ready to take on his adoptive father's dying instructions, quickly disappeared on the hillside at the entrance of the village under the surprised gaze of the independent regiment sentry. A new recruit exclaimed curiously, "Squad leader, why didn't you stop and inquire about that person leaving the village? That's a fool. What did you stop him from doing?" "Fool. Really? I see how he walked just now, he doesn't look like a fool. If you go to the village and ask, you'll know that guy is a fool. Don't provoke him when you see him in the village. According to the villagers, this guy is not very clever. If he gets into trouble, he will really hit people. We can't break discipline." Yang Taizhu couldn't hear the conversation between the new and old soldiers. Even if he heard it, he wouldn't argue anything. It's good to be a fool these days. People are too smart, they may not live long. It's rare to live again, he wants to live a few more years. Following the intricate mountain road towards the outside, Yang Taizhu quickly arrived at the town closest to the village. Although he rarely comes here on a regular basis, in order to find food and change money, he must come to the bustling town with many people. As for the more crowded and bustling county town, he hasn't decided to go yet. After all, even the town has been occupied by small devils and puppet troops, and there may be more small devils stationed in strategically important county towns. For the little devils and the puppet army, they don't care whether they are fools or not. If you really don't like it and just throw a bullet in your arms, Yang Taizhu will also feel wrongly killed. First, take a walk around the town to see if you can get something done. To his surprise, before he arrived at the small town, he saw 2 little devils and several puppet soldiers setting up checkpoints at the intersection ahead. Passengers must open their luggage and hand it over to the puppet army for inspection. On the other hand, the 2 little devils remained expressionless on the side, occasionally scolding these puppet soldiers. Look at the carriage beside the little devil, there are also many bags thrown. Although I don't know what's inside the bag, I think it should be a controlled item. At present, the 8th Root Army is deeply engaged in combat behind enemy lines, and the little devils are also beginning to blockade supplies. Grain and salt are strictly controlled by the little devils. Without any accidents, what's inside the cart bag must be grain and salt. Feeling the short knife inserted in his waist, Yang Taizhu decided to take a risk and give it a try. Kill 2 little devils first, and if the remaining 5 puppet soldiers dare to resist, they can only be slaughtered together. For him, the genes of adventure and slaughter also pierced through his soul together. Many of the people who were killed in their past lives felt guilty and gradually grew tired of killing. But the ones who were going to be slaughtered next were all a bunch of animals, so it should be considered doing good deeds for the people, right? With a determined heart, Yang Taizhu immediately dug out a few clumps of mud from the nearby stinky mud ditch and wiped a few directly on his face and body. The tattered clothes, which already had a sour and refreshing taste, quickly became foul-smelling and could be smelled from afar. Throwing away a broken shoe, Yang Taizhu hunched over barefoot, revealing a silly smile that only blooms when he sees delicious food. He giggled foolishly while walking towards the checkpoint. If you win, you won't have to worry about food and drink. If you lose, you'll go on a journey like a soul. Yang Taizhu, who had prepared for the best and worst in his heart, ultimately made a resolute decision to walk towards the checkpoint. If there are only 2 Japanese soldiers and 5 puppet army checkpoints that cannot be taken down, how can we talk about growing bigger and stronger, creating more glory? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Carrying a dead mouse in your pocket. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Carrying a dead mouse in your pocket. As the saying goes, people are iron, and food is steel. A meal without hunger is a panic. For the little devils who invaded Jin province, they naturally understood these simple truths. To curb the development of the anti-Japanese forces, they quickly implemented material control. In addition to implementing the policy of local grain requisition in the occupied areas, they also restricted the entry of strategic materials such as salt and iron into the guerrilla zones. In order to survive and develop in enemy territory, all anti-Japanese forces must find ways to obtain food, salt, and money. In order to strengthen the control of materials in the occupied areas, the Little Devils and the Puppet Army often set up checkpoints and conduct inspections on important roads. If someone is found carrying controlled materials, they will either be arrested and interrogated, or the materials will be confiscated directly. When encountering small devils or puppet soldiers who set up checkpoints for investigation, the common people can only consider themselves unlucky. Compared to being caught by the little devils or puppet troops and subjected to severe torture to extract confessions, confiscating purchased materials is already considered a very fortunate thing. The several puppet soldiers responsible for stationed in the small town were also aware of the 2 little devils who served as supervisors around them. Taking them out to set up checkpoints for investigation was actually more to make extra money. Check the confiscated materials and sell them when they are brought back to the town. The dirty money obtained is naturally carried by the little devil into his pocket. For the devils dispatched to the small town for garrison, if there is no benefit, how would they be willing to go to the intersection to set up checkpoints on such a cold day? Just as a few puppet soldiers felt that they had not achieved much today, they looked at the figure that appeared ahead and quickly said, "Captain, is there someone ahead? That guy is sneaky, isn't it? The 8th route. 8th route. Die, 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 die." The two little devils standing by the carriage became excited when they heard the sensitive words, 8th route. It was precisely at this moment that the ghostly figure ahead walked straight towards them. When the puppet army saw the person coming, one of them couldn't help but say, "Captain, isn't this a beggar? He smells so bad on him." The captain of the puppet army, who was originally holding a gun, also smelled a foul odor drifting in the wind. Although it's hard to see what the newcomer looks like, this outfit is even worse than a beggar. The most crucial thing is that he is still muttering something in his mouth. Until two puppet soldiers walked over at the signal of the squad leader, the beggar with mud on his face still said foolishly, "I have something delicious. I have something delicious. If I don't give it to you, I won't give it to you." The beggar who came back and forth reciting these words still had one hand around his waist. Approaching the puppet army attempting to investigate, I saw a beggar with a silly smile on his face and muttering such crazy words back and forth. In an instant, he was speechless and said, "Captain, this is just a fool." In fact, when the beggar approached a little closer, the team leader guessed that in such weather, people would wander barefoot outside, and no one would do so except for a fool and a normal person. But the two little devils are watching, and he must also investigate. Bring the people over and have them checked by the two grand princes. Yes, Captain. Fool, hurry up and leave. One of the puppet soldiers didn't want to get stained with the mud on the beggar's body, so they directly used the stock of their gun to hammer the beggar. The beggar, who had been hammered, stumbled a bit in his footsteps, but still held his hand in his arms and muttered, "This is for Mom to eat, it's delicious. Sigh, it's unlucky. Today when I went out, how could I come across such a fool?" Knowing that he is a fool, you still have a common understanding with fools. Aren't you even dumber than a fool? The two puppet soldiers who were joking with each other soon saw the beggar being pushed in front of the two little devils. The captain, who acted as the interrogator, also said kindly, "Little brother, where are you from? What is in your arms?" "Delicious. It's for Mom to eat, not for you to eat." Seeing that the beggar seemed to be very concerned about what was in his arms, one of the little devils said, "Wang Sang, what's in his arms? Let him take it out, we need to check it." Okay, Taijun." "Stupid kid, did you hear what Taijun said? Show Taijun what's in your arms." "No, don't show it. Mom is hungry and wants to eat something delicious." After eating something delicious, she woke up. Upon hearing the beggar's big tongue and words uttering these words, the two puppet soldiers sank in their hearts, knowing that the mother of this fool might have starved to death. Fools may seem foolish, but they still seem quite filial. In the opinion of the team leader, if a fool doesn't listen to advice and doesn't take out the things in his arms, the two little devils may not be willing. If you really want to provoke the little devil, this fool might even lose his life here. So he quickly stepped forward and said, "You idiot, quickly take out your things. Otherwise, I'll hit you. Don't fight. Don't fight. Obey me. Big fool, obey me." Seeing the beggar crouching on the ground in fear, the hand that was previously held in his arms was also pulled out. Seeing what the beggar was holding, both the little devils and the puppet army were startled, and one of the puppet soldiers kicked him directly. "Mom, you big idiot, holding a dead mouse in your arms, and it's so delicious. What the hell are you eating?" The beggar who was kicked to the ground seems to have accidentally lost the dead mouse in his hand. As soon as I got up, I was ready to pick up the dead mouse that had fallen on the ground. Two little devils saw this scene and felt that this fool was really foolish. But just as the two little devils were smiling, the beggar, who was still stumbling, suddenly touched his waist and didn't wait for the little devils and the puppet army to react. This sharp short knife has already wiped the neck of a little devil. When the little devil, whose neck had been wiped, covered his throat and could only make a whimper, he hugged the beggar of another little devil and directly used a short knife to stab the chest of the little devil that he had controlled several times. At the same time as blood splattered, the beggar picked up the little devil and slid his rifle to the side. He continued to hug the body of the little devil and aimed his gun at the frightened puppet captain. His voice was cold and said, "Do you want to die or live?" "I want to live, I want to live. Hero, please spare my life. We have eyes that don't know Taishan. If you want to survive, just put down your gun." "What's going on? Just you guys, dare you fight me for life?" Seeing two puppet soldiers, the beggar aimed his gun at himself and used the corpse of the little devil as a shield, and spoke in a harsh tone. The leader of the puppet army squad, whose head was covered by the muzzle of the gun, quickly ordered his subordinates to put down the gun. When 5 puppet soldiers crouched on the ground with their heads in their arms, holding a newly captured 38 caliber rifle, Ong Taiju first gave the puppet army a stock of his own stock. The puppet army, who had been overturned by Luan, quickly got down and said, "Hero, spare your life. Spare your life. You owe me this, but now that the account is settled, I'll spare you a dog's life." At the same time, Yang Taiju kicked one of the puppet soldiers. Previously, it was this puppet army who kicked him. He, who is accustomed to seeking revenge on the spot, naturally wants to reclaim what they owe him first. After kicking, Yang Taiju continued, "I have revenge. If the 3 of you didn't provoke me, I'll let you go. Take off your cotton clothes and pants. These clothes are really a waste to wear on you." The 5 puppet soldiers who felt fortunate to be able to save their lives dared not refute anything. After taking off his cotton jacket and pants, he watched helplessly as Yang Taiju threw something onto the nearby carriage. And their guns were naturally confiscated. Looking at the seized loot, Yang Taiju felt that this adventure was not in vain. In addition to seizing many daily necessities, a crooked handlebar machine gun was also seized. A Type 38 rifle equipped by the Japanese Army and 5 Type 24 rifles used by the puppet army. Of course, in this era, this rifle also has another name, which is the Zhongjing infantry rifle. No matter what kind of gun, in Yang Tieju's view, compared to previously seizing the outpost with bare hands, he finally has a weapon to lean against. It's a bit regrettable that we couldn't capture the 20-round shell gun, commonly known as the box cannon, by the 8th Root Army. Compared to rifles that are too long and often too eye-catching to carry on the back, handguns can be carried around the waist, making them more convenient for close combat raids. Fortunately, Ong Taiju understands that as long as he is willing to spend time and energy, he can seize a shell gun in this era without any problem. And what he needs to do now is to rush the carriage and run away quickly. If we really want the little devils in the town to know that he killed 2 little devils, the vengeful little devils may still be relentlessly pursuing him. Just coming out to catch some extra money, he hasn't even wanted to poke the little devil's hornet's nest yet. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. What to argue with fools. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. What to argue with fools. Yang Taiju, who was driving away in a carriage, ignored the 5 trembling puppet soldiers behind him. To spare their lives is also for the sake of being fellow countrymen. I'm afraid I know in my heart that these poor puppet soldiers must have something to hate. But they surrendered with great cooperation and then started killing them, feeling a bit guilty. Please spare their lives. When they bring the 2 little devils back to the small town, the result may not be too good. For the little devils stationed in the small town, they don't care whether the puppet army is alive or dead, but when their own soldiers die, the little devils will become furious. But what does it have to do with Yang Taiju, who is rushing to leave at this moment? When he had previously killed the first little devil with a short knife, he heard voices coming from his mind. At that time, he didn't have the mood to care about these things. It wasn't until the battle was over and he left the checkpoint, drove the carriage to the roadside fork, that he remembered this. The host completes the first kill and activates the guard system. The first kill rewards the host with a 5x5 storage space, a bag of 50 kilograms of white flour, a pot of 5 liters of soybean oil, and 10 yuan in the ocean. It is hoped that the host will continue to guard and kill enemies, and accumulate more points. Looking at the sudden appearance of the so-called system, although Yang Taizhu was a bit confused, he was still more happy. Killing devils to accumulate points and redeem various supplies provided by the system, he suddenly felt that God was quite interesting. Accepting the system's transmission of information, he realized that the system not only has access functions, but also exchange functions. He felt that the skills he had learned in his previous life finally came into play in this life. He hesitated before whether to drive the carriage back to the village, but now he finally breathes a sigh of relief. Directly at the fork in the road, count all the things that the little devils have searched for, and then throw them all into the storage space. Unfortunately, there is not enough space to store live animals, so this pack horse may have to find a place to hide first. After some thought, he still couldn't bear to let his pack horse make a living and continued to lead it back to the back mountain near Yang village. As for the carriage pulled by the pack horse, he collected it into the storage space. There is a carriage that is uncertain when it will be used. The captured pack horse was eventually tied to a cave in the mountains behind the village by Yang Taizhu. Before leaving, he didn't forget to cut some grass for the pack horse to ensure that it was tied up in a hole and wouldn't starve to death. After finishing these tasks, Yang Taizhu swayed and carried a bag of things before nightfall, and returned to his yard under the watchful gaze of the village sentry. Kong Jie, who was patrolling and inspecting at the village entrance, saw Yang Taizhu carrying a bag of things into the village. His eyes were somewhat surprised and he said, "Isn't this the foolish pillar in the village? The bag of things he carried seems to be food, right? That's what he brought." "Captain, I don't know. Should we stop him and ask?" "Forget it. According to the village chief, his family has just lost their elders. Except for him, who is already an adult, the rest are only half-grown children. Although this foolish pillar is not very clever, he knows how to go to the mountains to find food. That food must have been brought by him. He's a fool. Where are you going to get food? Wait, he won't go steal other people's food, will he? Do you think we can handle this kind of thing? If you're serious with a fool, do you think I'm stupid?" But Yang Taizhu should know that Kong Jie gave him the nickname, Silly Pillar, and he is likely to risk his life. But Kong Jie should know that before they met, he was given the nickname, Kong Erlengzi, by Yang Taizhu, and he would probably feel so depressed that he vomited blood. Carrying a bag of things back home, the 5 younger brothers and sisters who were curious about where this silly brother had gone before were at home. If it weren't for knowing that this big brother is foolish enough to go home at night, they would probably have to look for people everywhere every day. As the eldest sister, Yang Xinghua saw the silly elder brother carrying a bag of things and was very curious, saying, "Brother, what are you carrying?" "Eating." The brief answer stunned all the siblings. Yang Taizhu, who placed the bag on the ground and began to untie it, quickly said, "Dad told me to take care of you from now on. You must all listen to me in the future when it comes to family matters." The sudden words stunned the younger sister Yang Xinghua for a long time. She stared at Yang Taizhu, whose expression had not changed much, and said in half a voice, "Brother, your brain has become smarter. You are the older brother, of course we listen to you. This matter needs to be kept confidential. Steaming white bread and eating meat at night. Cooking is the responsibility of my older sister. I'll take care of the food. You guys, be obedient. Otherwise, you'll get beaten up. My adoptive father is gone, and I'll be the eldest in the family from now on. In order to live together in the future, these younger siblings will not be mischievous." Yang Taizhu, who has never taken care of his younger siblings, can only play the role of a powerful and domineering elder brother. Speaking intermittently is also to prove that one is not foolish. Just getting smarter, it always takes some time to adapt. At home, these younger brothers and sisters dare not provoke Yang Taizhu. Because they know that this big brother is foolish and can hit people fiercely. Just seeing what Yang Taizhu had pulled out of the bag, the older sister was a bit worried and said, "Brother, you won't go steal other people's things, will you? If others find out, what will you do then?" Things, they were stolen by killing the devils, not stolen. The devils are bad people, they should be killed. Remember, don't tell anyone. Keep the food hidden, and you won't be afraid of hunger in the future. In a few days, I'll make some cotton clothes. Put them on, and they won't be cold anymore. Upon hearing Yang Taizhu say that the things were stolen by killing the little devils, the sensible siblings were all scared to death. On the contrary, the two young siblings, looking at the white noodles and cured meat in the bag, had already started to rebel and hoped to have a meal soon. Seeing the sensible siblings all scared out of their wits, Yang Taizhu said nonchalantly, "No one knows who killed them outside the mountain. Big sister, I'm hungry, go cook. Steam more white bread and stir-fry a plate of cured meat. Only when you're full can you have strength." After saying these words, Yang Xinghua finally calmed down and quickly said, "Akui, Huaihua, you all remember. No one can say this when you leave the house. Otherwise, even if Big Brother doesn't beat you, I will beat you to death. Remember. Remember, Big Sister. Do you remember the little cow and the little fairy? Remember, Big Sister." Although the youngest siblings are not very clear about what killing the little devil means. You can see the big sister with a stern face, they all know how to answer. If you don't listen, the elder sister can be very aggressive and painful when fighting. Yang Taizhu, who stood aside, did not intervene in response to big sister's strict instructions. As she carried her white noodles and cured meat into the kitchen, he took out a paper bag and smiled, saying, "Xiao Xian, come over." Yang Xianhua, the youngest girl who was called out, said with a somewhat scared expression, "Big brother, don't hit me. I won't cry, can you please don't hit me? I will be obedient in the future, can you please don't hit me?" He said, "I won't cry," but tears were already swirling in his eyes. In contrast, Yang Tinu, the fifth younger brother who was only 7 years old, was very clever and ran to the kitchen to help out, fearing that he might be beaten if stopped by his elder brother. For Yang Taizhu, seeing his youngest sister, he was afraid that he would be so scared, and his heart felt somewhat speechless. But he knew that since his adoptive father passed away unexpectedly, his emotions have become extremely unstable. "My adoptive father used to be here, but at least I could discipline him." Later on, when his adoptive father was gone, only his second sister Yang Xinghua could persuade someone who could discipline him at home. Unfortunately, the youngest girl is more prone to crying, so she is often yelled at by Yang Taizhu. "Sigh, it's all the sins created by my predecessor, but why should I bear these? Forget it, why bother with a fool?" Yang Taizhu, who sighed inwardly, could only squat down and say, "Big brother won't hit you. Big brother is not foolish. He gave you delicious food. Please forgive him, okay? Look, what's in Big Brother's hand? Sugar, sweet, do you want to eat it?" Although he really wanted to pull the little girl into his arms, he was worried that this action might scare her and make her cry. Immediately open the candy cubes in the paper bag and place them in front of the little girl, hoping to soothe her. Just at this moment, when I heard my younger brother Yang Tinu report that his older brother was preparing to hit my younger sister, Yang Xinghua quickly ran out of the kitchen. Upon hearing what Yang Taizhu said, the elderly and sensible Yang Xinghua burst into tears. It is said that, elder brother is like father, elder sister is like mother. As a child adopted by her adoptive father, Yang Xinghua also felt that it was really difficult to support this family after her adoptive father passed away. Fortunately, God has eyes, and Big Brother is finally not foolish. With the help of my elder brother, this family cannot be separated. For their 6 siblings, they were abandoned children picked up by their adoptive father. If they didn't have this family, how would they survive in such a chaotic era? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Am I a crow's mouth? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Am I a crow's mouth? After dinner, standing at the entrance of the courtyard, looking at Yang village shrouded in darkness, Yang Taizhu, with a complex mood, also began to think about how to survive in this era. If he were alone, he would definitely live a carefree life. With the combat skills he possessed in his past life, coupled with his systematic presence, joining the 8th Root Army would definitely be like a fish in water. But the problem now is, he has 5 still young siblings to take care of. How can he just leave? Oh, forget it. I've never been the protagonist's fate, so I'll just stay honest in the village. If I really want to go to the battlefield, facing the planes and cannons of the little devils, I can't say I'll definitely survive. If you want to fight the little devils, you can still fight in the village. Since my system is called a guardian system, there must be a purpose behind it. I fought for some unknown reason in my past life, so I lived in confusion. In this life, perhaps I can find the answer. Yang Taizhu thought that staying in the village could not only protect his still young siblings, but also protect the village neighbors who took good care of their family. As a former village guardian, this is also his responsibility and obligation. Although it is unknown when the Yamamoto Special Forces team arrived, in the TV drama, the Independent Corps had just entered Yangtzuan. If I remember correctly, there was snow on the ground when the Special Forces team entered the village. It is speculated that the Special Forces surprise attack will wait until after it snows. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a chill on his face. When I looked up again, I saw a snowflake starting to drift in the sky. Yang Taizhu, who was a bit confused, said speechlessly, "Nonsense, am I a crow's mouth? It snowed just as I said it." Knowing that once it snows, the special agent team commanded by Yamamoto will touch it at any time, and Yang Taizhu is not willing to take the initiative to warn. He didn't know on which day the Yamamoto Special Forces team would come. Secondly, who would believe what a fool says? Forget it. Soldiers will come to stop us. The water comes to cover the earth. My home is just at the back edge of the village. The terrain is quite good. When the battle starts, we can also support from the side. But I don't know whether Yamamoto will fight here. But from observations during the day, it can be seen that the defensive works built by the independent regiment are more deployed in front of the village. The special agents team commanded by Yamamoto originally intended to bypass Yangtzuan and launch a surprise attack on the 8th Root Army headquarters located in Daxia Bay, so it is very likely to go here. As a former elite special forces soldier and senior mercenary, Yang Taizhu naturally has the ability to analyze enemy situations on the battlefield. He even knew that the independent regiment had arranged a hidden outpost on a soil slope not far from his home. When he returned to his home with an oil lamp and looked at his younger brother and sister's slightly thin clothes, Yang Taizhu immediately said, "Big sister, do you have fabric at home? I can get cotton, can you sew cotton clothes?" Faced with her elder brother's inquiry, Yang Xinghua quickly said, "Brother, there are still a few old clothes that my father wore in his early years at home. If there is cotton, we can still change a few cotton jackets. Is it snowing outside?" Then prepare yourself, I'll bring the cotton back tomorrow." "Brother, are you going to the city again or what are you doing?" "You can't go, it's too dangerous outside." "It's okay. If I don't go to town tomorrow, I'll take a stroll around the back mountain. There's something I can't tell you now. Listen to me, I can get cotton. Just stay at home and prepare to sew cotton clothes for the little immortals." "All right then. Be careful yourself, we will wait for you to return safely at home." "Well, wait for me to sleep in the room where my dad used to sleep. It's getting late, take them to bed. Okay. Brother, then you should also go to bed early. Seeing the older brother's speech becoming smoother and smoother, Yang Xinghua also knew that this was a sign that the older brother had become smarter. Although she was worried that her elder brother would cause great trouble outside, Yang Xinghua was also aware that the world was very dangerous, and if she didn't work hard, she might end up dead. Especially during this period, the uncles and aunties in the village are spreading rumors that the little devils who have occupied the county and town are committing all sorts of crimes, including killing, burning, looting, and so on. Even though Yang village is located in the hinterland of the mountains, there is no guarantee that one day a little devil will touch it. If the little devils really want to enter the village, only their siblings are unarmed, and falling into the hands of the little devils will definitely lead to death. Especially for a girl as old as her, if she were really caught by the little devils, her fate would definitely be even worse than death. Having a big brother who dares to kill the little devils at least makes her feel more secure. If one day the little devils break into the village, she believes that the big brother will also do his best to protect them. In that case, maybe they can still escape a disaster. Young Taizhu, who was not sure what his older sister was thinking, looked at the foster father's room that had been cleaned up but no one had moved in, and did not feel any taboos about living here. For him in his past life, he had eaten and slept many times lying next to the body. Hurry up and go to bed. When you enter the mountains tomorrow, find a way to build a safe shelter. If you really come across a little devil going to the countryside to clean up, you can also have a place to hide. I'm not afraid of the little devil, but ultimately I have to consider my younger brothers and sisters who are still young. Thinking that his family is still inseparable from him for the time being, and that his family also lives in the village, Yang Taizhu is also thinking about whether to find a few reliable young people in the village and form a village-level militia team to be responsible for the security and defense of the village. You should know that nowadays, villages like them not only need to guard against small devils and puppet armies, but also against bandits who rob homes and homes. Thinking of the bandits, Yang Tieju's face also showed a hint of murderous intent. After the matter with the Yamamoto Special Forces team is resolved, we will go find that group of bandits to have an attack. Anyway, my adoptive father also died under the pursuit of that group of bandits. The hatred of killing my father is unforgettable, take away their lair, and I think we can also seize a lot of things. For the people living in the Taihang Mountains, life is already difficult and they have to endure exploitation and oppression from various forces. In the era of war and chaos, sometimes it is impossible to find enough food and clothing. This winter may be unbearable again. Thinking about these things in his mind, Yang Taizhu finally fell asleep in a daze and woke up early the next morning. Pushing open the window, he saw that a thin layer of snow had already accumulated in the yard, and he also knew that winter had officially arrived in the Taihang Mountains. Leaving the bed and feeling the cool breeze blowing into the house, Yang Taizhu quickly closed the window and couldn't help but mutter, "Even my sturdy body feels cold. My younger brothers and sisters with thin clothes probably feel even colder." Although there are several seized cotton jackets in the space, they are all too large and inconvenient to wear in the village. I also considered before whether to use the exchange ability of the system to exchange a few cotton jackets for my younger siblings first. But after careful consideration, he only accumulated 10 points in total, and using the precious points to exchange for cotton clothes was somewhat luxurious. Moreover, there are many good things that can be exchanged with points, so you naturally need to save them. It's not yet time to reach the end of the mountain and water. Accumulate more points on yourself, and it's uncertain when you'll be able to save your life. Putting on the tattered cotton jacket his adoptive father wore before his death, Yang Taizhu didn't feel any bad luck either. Unlike when the elderly in later generations pass away, everything they used before their death will be burned. In this era, every piece of clothing is precious. To describe it as something that Yang Taizhu has read in later generations, it must be more suitable for different situations, and that is, new 3 years, old 3 years, sewing and patching for another 3 years. Many of the clothes he wears are now being worn by his 2 young brothers at home. And clothes that Yang Xinghua cannot wear will also be sewn and patched for her two younger sisters to wear. Nowadays, which families, adults and children don't wear many patches on their clothes. The custom of wearing new clothes to celebrate the new year is really unaffordable for rural people nowadays. After breakfast, Yang Taizhu disappeared into the valley in front of the village, holding hands and bowing down, under the gaze of his younger brother, sister, and the village's independent regiment sentry. Neither the villagers nor the sentry will say much about him leaving the village. It is precisely this kind of disregard and indulgence that makes Yang Taizhu feel happy to continue playing the role of a fool. In these chaotic times, it may be easier not to be bullied, to be a little foolish and a little desperate. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Establishing the position of homeowner. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Establishing the position of homeowner. Looking at the valley after snowfall, Yang Taizhu walked around from the village entrance to the big mountain behind the village, and first went to see the pack horses tied in the cave. He found that all the green grass he had cut had been eaten, so he quickly took some grass and continued to feed the pack horse. Although he thought it was troublesome, Yang Taizhu couldn't bear to kill the pack horse and eat meat. The pack horse he seized should not be a problem for short-distance riding. In the future, when going out, riding it should be faster than walking. Recalling last night before going to bed, he was planning to build a shelter in the mountains. Yang Taizhu, who used to go hunting with his foster father in the mountains earlier, soon remembered a natural cave hidden deep in the mountains. That cave is very hidden and the interior is very spacious. If you really want to come across a little devil going to the countryside to carry out a crackdown, you can't just run away with your younger brother and sister. Since the villagers see me as a defender, it's also necessary to find a way out for the villagers. If the village is destroyed, it can be rebuilt. If there are no people left, then there is really nothing left. After re-feeding the pack horse with grass, Yang Taizhu continued to advance towards the back mountain. After walking for almost half an hour, I finally arrived at a valley with a dangerous terrain. That natural cave is located halfway up the mountain, and it's difficult to find without climbing up. Standing nearby and carefully examining, Yang Taizhu pondered and said, "This place is easy to defend but difficult to attack. You only need to build a few permanent fortifications halfway up the mountain. Even if the little devils bring cannons, there is not much possibility of attacking the mountain. As for aerial bombing, the cave is located in a depression on the rock wall, and the bomb can only be dropped from the sky to the top or bottom of the mountain. It is impossible to throw the bomb into the cave. So, this location is indeed suitable as a shelter. I have considered earlier whether it is possible to dig tunnels at home or in the village. Qiang village is underground, with plenty of rocks and little soil. If you want to dig a tunnel in the village, you must have enough explosives. By manual excavation alone, it will take a monkey year and a horse month to dig. The village is not suitable for digging tunnels, and when encountering small devils or puppet troops going to the countryside to carry out campaigns, one can only choose to temporarily avoid the sharp edge. Store enough grain in advance in the karst cave. Combined with the construction of good defensive works, we are not afraid to fight for a year and a half. Arriving at the entrance of the cave halfway up the mountain and seeing the mountain path below, Yang Taizhu felt even more that it was undoubtedly the most suitable place to build a shelter here. As for the defensive works, it's not too late to come and build them when there is time in the future. Standing in front of the cave, Yang Taizhu could also feel that there was air circulation inside the cave. This means that the cave should have an exit. As for where the exit is located, he thinks it's time to find it carefully. But based on what he has seen so far, he feels that this large karst cave, cleaned up and used as a shelter, really feels a bit warm in winter and cool in summer. When you have time, you can indeed spend time planning and renovating it. Forget it, let's get down to business first. My younger brothers and sisters are still waiting for cotton to keep warm from the cold. Retrieve the seized puppet army cotton clothes and pants from the space, use a short knife to pick up the thread, extract the cotton sewn inside, and store it separately in a bag. He also didn't throw away the fake military clothes and pants that had been pulled out of cotton. Next time you have time, look for some natural dyes in the mountains to re-dye the clothes, and then you can change them into clothes suitable for your younger siblings. At least he knew that many of the military uniforms worn by the 8th Root Army, many of which were dyed and altered with confiscated uniforms. Thinking of 6 siblings, each sewing a cotton jacket and pants, does indeed require a lot of cotton. Young Taizhu was also very willing and directly removed the cotton jackets and pants of 5 puppet soldiers, while he kept the cotton jackets and pants of 2 little devils. Although he doesn't fit well, he stays in the space and may not know when he will be able to use it. Before, when watching anti-Japanese war dramas, one could always see the 8th Root Army stripping away all the little devils. Only by personally visiting this era did he understand why he was doing this. Compared to fabrics, cotton became a controlled material after the Japanese occupied Jin province. In winter, the 8th Root Army wanted to purchase a cotton jacket and pants for its soldiers. Apart from capturing them on the battlefield and scraping off enemy corpses, there was really nothing they could do. Leaving aside the fact that they cannot be bought, even if they can, the 8th Root Army, which is already short of funds, would have the money to buy cotton. Although I really want to help these seniors, my current abilities are really limited. When I have more points in the future and come across a place where I can help, I will do my best. If I can't help, then I can only apologize. After comforting himself, young Taizhu carried the dismantled cotton on his back and swayed back to the village. Seeing young Taizhu leaving early in the morning and returning to the village before lunch, many villagers were curious about what he was carrying in his bag. Not to mention the villagers, Kong Jia, who learned the news, was also curious and said, "Silly Zhu has carried another bag of things back to the village." "Yes, Captain." The sentinel soldier said, "It doesn't seem like the bag is filled with food, but I don't know exactly what it is. Let's just leave it at that. Our regiment has just been stationed in the village, and we should also pay attention to maintaining good military-civilian relations. As long as this foolish pillar doesn't cause trouble, we'll just turn a blind eye. If there's really anything, let the village chief handle it." "Okay, Captain. Be clear and pretend to be foolish, and when the Yamamoto Special Forces ambush Yang village occurs, he is bound to become the focal point of the village." But young Taizhu believes that if he wants to be a good village guardian, he also needs the support and cooperation of the villagers. Only by letting the villagers know that he has the ability to protect the safety of the village, will the villagers support him. As for the independent regiments currently stationed in the village, they will not be transferred in the short term and will inevitably deal with them in the future. If we really want to form a village-level militia team, we must eventually accept the command and leadership of the 8th Root Army. Before that, he hoped to have more initiative. For example, in the area of weapon seizure, he hopes to prioritize the militia organized in the village. If you don't have reliable weapons and equipment in your hands, it's definitely impossible to deal with the rural crackdown of the Little Devils and the puppet army alone. Although assistance from the nearby 8th Root Army can be sought, in emergency situations, the village also needs to have a certain level of self-protection capability. Similar to encountering bandits, the militia team formed in the village can easily defeat the bandits looking for teeth everywhere. The reason why bandits dare to raid homes and buildings so arrogantly is not because they have weapons in their hands. If there are weapons in the village, the bandits will definitely not dare to offend easily. The younger brothers and sisters who stayed at home and didn't go out also helped their older sisters unpack old clothes and prepare to sew cotton jackets. When they saw their elder brother young Taizhu returning home, he was indeed carrying another bag. They all knew that they could finally put on warm cotton clothes and pants this year. "Brother, is this bag full of cotton?" When sewing, you can stuff more cotton. If there's a lot of cotton, you can see if you can sew a quilt. The weather is getting colder, and if you don't cover it with a quilt, you'll feel cold on the bed at night. "Okay, brother." You don't need to sew my cotton jacket and pants. I can wear my dad's clothes. First, sew them for Xiaoniu and Xiaoxian, and then sew them for Akui and Huaihua. The rest for you to sew yourself. During this time, don't go out too much, and Huaihua can also help your second sister. Okay, brother. In just one day, Ong Taizhu quickly established himself as the head of the family by obtaining grain and cotton. My younger brother and sister, who were still afraid before, are willing to be close to him now. And the little sister who was still afraid of him like a tiger yesterday is no longer so afraid. Seeing Yang Taizhu waving, she obediently walked over and didn't resist her elder brother's embrace. When she saw her older brother take out another piece of candy, the little girl instantly smiled and smiled. I tasted one yesterday, and she still remembers it to this day. Thank you, big brother. This candy is so sweet and delicious. If there is something delicious, this little girl is willing to stick to herself. Seeing the other younger brothers and sisters looking envious, Yang Taizhu didn't mean to be stingy either. He handed the paper bag over and said, "One person, one piece. After finishing the meal, pull it down. When you leave the door, don't make a fuss, you know." Got it, thank you big brother. Yang Tiniu, ranked 5th, has long been envious of the malty candy that his younger sister ate yesterday. But yesterday he secretly reported, afraid that his older brother would punish him, so he didn't dare to ask in the end. At that time, the other siblings thought that the older brother only had a piece of candy in his hand. Now that there are several pieces in the paper bag, I can't help but want to take one and taste it. Nowadays, for the children in the village, wanting to eat candy is also a very luxurious thing. And white sugar was also an important strategic material during the anti-Japanese war. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Can Fools Hunt? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Can Fools Hunt? Having food at home keeps one's heart calm. For Yang Taizhu and his family, they all felt very happy when they saw the grain stored in the rice jar filled with food. Combined with the cotton clothes made by my older sister, this winter doesn't seem as cold anymore. Bring out cotton from outside, even if Yang Taizhu goes out of the village once a day as scheduled. But a few times later, he didn't come back with anything on his back. Although the sentinels of the independent regiment were curious, it was not easy for them to come forward and ask questions. On the contrary, Yang Yizhong, the village chief of Yang village, was entrusted by the independent group to come to Yang Tieju's house and inquire about the situation with Yang Xinghua. Facing the village chief's inquiry, Yang Xinghua quickly said, "My brother has gone to the back mountain to check those traps." Trap. Does your brother also know how to hunt? Yes. He has been learning hunting from my father for so many years, and naturally he has learned a lot. Moreover, after my father left, my brother's mind seems to have become much clearer. Speaking of things, he is much clearer than before. Oh, that's a good thing. If your brother can support this family, you guys will have some support in the future. After a brief inquiry, the village chief also shared the information he had learned with the independent group. Upon learning of this situation, Kong Jie also said directly, "How about it? I'll just say, what problems can a fool have? However, can a fool hunt? Captain, I'm not stupid. You ask me, how do I know? You should go ask Silly." The chief of staff, who was questioned, also responded with a smile, and other cadres laughed out loud. When Yang Taizhu returned home, the older sister finished talking about what the village chief had inquired about at home. He nodded and said, "It's okay. You're very clever to say that." After touching his older sister's hair, Yang Taizhu also planned to come back to the mountain next time and consider hunting some prey. He felt it necessary to familiarize himself with the weapons he had previously seized. After all, the weapons he used in his past life were different from the weapons he uses now. Yang Taizhu, who had made a decision in his heart, still left home in the early morning as usual, although he always remembered the arrival of the Yamamoto special agent team. That pack horse was also transferred by him to the other side of the cave, and even the cave was cleaned up. Considering the sensitivity of gunshots, Yang Taizhu deliberately chose to hunt in the deep jungle of the valley. Fortunately, in that deep valley, he was able to discover a group of wild boars. Take out the Type 24 rifle, lock, aim, and pull the trigger. The sound of gunfire rang out, and the strongest wild boar in the herd was instantly shot down. Pull the bolt of the gun, while exiting the bullet case, quickly reset the bolt, aim again, and the second bullet will also hit the target. After 3 shots, the remaining wild boars had fled in a panic, with many escaping from range. 3 shots knocked down 3 wild boars, and Yang Taizhu felt that his marksmanship was still satisfactory at the moment. It's just that the firing rate of this rifle is a bit of a headache for him. I'm used to using an automatic rifle. It's normal to feel uncomfortable with a rifle that can't even be called a semi-automatic. But the range, accuracy, and even power of this rifle are still quite good. Fortunately, my marksmanship is decent and I haven't fallen behind. Taking down his gun and entering the valley, Yang Taizhu looked at the 3 wild boars lying in a pool of blood. He planned to carry one back on his own. These days, the villagers are short of oil, water, and meat. This wild pork is also quite good meat. Put all 3 wild boars into the storage space, and Yang Taizhu found a relatively hidden place to retrieve the seized crooked handlebar machine gun. Although he knew that even the little devils didn't like to use this light machine gun, at least it was also a light machine gun. When firepower suppression is needed, the firepower produced by machine guns is definitely much stronger than that of rifles. If you really want to encounter the special agent team led by Yamamoto, Yang Taizhu feels that having a light machine gun can also make Yamamoto's agents suffer a bit. Looking at the tilted machine gun's upward loading port, he said speechlessly, shouldn't it be replaced with a drum? This loading method takes a lot of time to change the magazine each time, and it's also easy to fly into sand and stones during battles, causing jamming. Roast about Yang Taizhu, he still tried to aim and shoot. It has to be said that the aiming and shooting method of sticking the stock to his cheek really made him feel very uncomfortable. But right now, he only has this light machine gun in his hand, so if he dislikes it, it's useless. Sigh, when there's a chance, we'll try to hand over the Czech-style light machine gun. The light machine gun should be more effective in combat than this. During the anti-Japanese war, Yang Taizhu naturally knew a lot about the useful weapons. By emptying the 2 magazine clips, Yang Taizhu keenly realized that this crooked handle was indeed not very useful, and the impact point during shooting was slightly more to the left than expected. Fortunately, I took it out for a test shot. Otherwise, during the battle, I would have taken it out and used it directly. The bullet would have successfully dodged the target in minutes. Readjust the shooting posture and aiming angle, and seeing that the impact point finally became normal, Yang Taizhu no longer continued shooting. But instead, take out the spare magazine, reload the machine gun magazine, and ensure that you can take out the gun and shoot it. After practicing his gun in the deep mountains for a while and confirming that his marksmanship was still trustworthy, Yang Taizhu immediately stood up and left to save bullets. This time he did not enter from the village entrance, but instead took a detour to the village, but still caught the attention of the sentry. Class monitor, is that a silly pillar? Is he carrying a wild boar on his back? It's so big. Grasping a blade of grass, this silly pillar is amazing. This wild boar may weigh 300 to 400 pounds, he's so strong. If the food of the people is not good these days, then the food of the 8th Route Army soldiers is also very poor. Miscellaneous grains, steamed buns, and millet are the daily staple foods for soldiers. Just this kind of staple food cannot achieve daily satiety. As for eating meat, it's even more about luck. Having won the battle and captured, perhaps one can enjoy the canned beef provided by the little devils. As for pork or other meats, they may not be eaten many times a year. When Yang Taizhu returned home carrying the wild boar, the younger brothers and sisters who were at home were all shocked. After a while, Yang Xianhua ran to the big brother who had thrown the wild boar in the yard and said with a smile, "Big brother, you're so amazing. You little girl, are you greedy again? After slaughtering the wild boar, let the elder sister stew meat for you, okay? Okay. Big brother is the best, and second sister is also good. Having meat to eat, the whole family is a good person." Just as everyone was surprised, Yang Taizhu said, "Akui, go find some hay to cushion the yard. Big sister and Huaihua will go boil water. If it's a little cow, go pour me a cup of cold water." "Okay, big brother." The younger brothers and sisters who were commanded were all very happy and busy. Yang Taizhu, on the other hand, found the pig-killing tool that his foster father had used before his death and prepared to open the wild boar and pierce its belly. Before the water could boil, several villagers appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. Seeing the wild boar placed in the courtyard, as well as Yang Taizhu holding a pig-killing knife in his hand, these villagers who came to watch the excitement dared not step into the courtyard door. As if afraid, Yang Taizhu, holding a pig-killing knife, would suddenly become angry. Yang Taizhu, who had no intention of eating alone, walked directly towards the crowd watching the excitement with a knife in hand. As he walked over with his knife, the timid villager immediately said, "Hurry up, hurry up. This fool is really good at wielding his knife and chopping people." To the surprise of the villagers, Yang Taizhu, who was standing at the door, quickly said, "Dog eggs, big plugs, wealth and status, Ma Zi, do you want to eat meat? Think. Iron pillar, are you not foolish?" The four young people who were named have a good reputation and character in the village, and they rarely make fun of Yang Taizhu. In Yang Taizhu's view, if we want to form a militia team in the future, these young people are worth cultivating. Want to eat meat, come in, help, kill the pig. Yang Taizhu, who remained expressionless and spoke intermittently, still played the role of a fool with his true colors. Nevertheless, the four young people named by him, tempted by the temptation of eating meat, still bravely walked into the yard. On the other hand, other villagers who were not spotted dare not follow in recklessly. They all know that if they dare to steal Yang Taizhu's things, this fool will play with you. Now it seems that he has a lot of mental agility, but his energy is still there. If you break in recklessly, he won't welcome you to drive people away. It would be a loss of face. If Yang Taizhu's foster father had beaten a wild boar before, the villagers would have dared to go in and watch. In the end, some meat can be divided to some extent. But now, it is unknown whether Yang Taizhu will do so. But to grab something from a fool, even these shameless villagers feel like they can't do it. But standing at the door and watching the excitement, that's still possible. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Open-mindedness and quick talk, Kong Erleng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Open-mindedness and quick talk, Kong Erleng. With the help of several young people in the village, this wild boar, weighing over 300 pounds, was quickly stripped and cleaned up. Looking at the onlookers, Yang Taizhu seemed somewhat helpless, but it was also difficult to drive away. After considering for a while, he finally said, "Akui, go call the village chief uncle." "Okay, brother." When his younger brother Yang Tiechui called the village chief over, Yang Yizhong, who had heard the news earlier, also wanted to know what Yang Taizhu would do. Although he knew that the villagers were not very friendly towards the Yang Taizhu family. In the past, for the sake of Yang Taizhu's adoptive father's face, they would even give the Yang family some thin noodles because Yang Taizhu's adoptive father was a hunter. Although there was not much farming, Yang Taizhu's adoptive father adopted 6 children with his ability to hunt in the mountains. Just adopting Yang Taizhu as a fool has made many villagers unwilling to deal with the Yang family. As the village chief, Yang Yizhong is also very clear about it. As long as Yang Taizhu and his family are in the village, he will take care of them to some extent. But what Yang Yizhong didn't expect was that when he came over, An Taizhu said very directly, "Uncle Zhong, this meat, I think, divide it. Even if that sounds awkward to me." But the general meaning in the words was still understandable to Yang Yizhong. So he exclaimed in surprise, "Pillar, have you really decided to divide this meat?" "Well," Dad said, "to be a good person, you need to have a conscience and loyalty. But how do you divide this meat?" "I'll take care of it, will it succeed?" Every time Yang Taizhu spoke, only 2 or 3 words popped out, which made Yang Yizhong uncomfortable. But the meaning behind these words could make him understand. Thinking of what Yang Xinghua had said before, he also felt very pleased. Then he nodded and said, "Yes, now you are the master. You also fight the boar. Naturally, you are the master." "Thank you, Uncle Zhong. This half, the one sent to join the army, is it successful?" "What, are you going to give this half of the pork to the 8th Root Army? Are you really thinking about it?" "Well, those who serve in the army, fight against the Japanese, be loyal and serve the country." Dad said, "They are heroes." Seeing Yang Tieju's expression and serious words, Yang Yizhong immediately nodded and said, "Yes, your meat is the final say." Seeing Yang Yizhong nod in agreement, Yang Taizhu didn't say much anymore. He took the meat chopping knife in his hand, cut off a pig leg, removed the ribs, pushed the rest aside, and then said, "These are mine. These are from the village." Looking at the remaining half of the meat, it is estimated to weigh around 100 pounds. In Yang village, there are less than 100 households, and each household can receive a small 2 caddies. It has to be said that Yang Taizhu, like his deceased foster father, is still a very dignified person. So Yang Yizhong nodded and said, "Okay, according to what you said." With his words, Yang Taizhu called his older sister to his side and ordered, "Sister, cut the meat, cook, and invite Uncle Zhong and Dog Egg to eat together. Let's keep this pig heart. Give the rest to them. Dog Egg, don't mind. Push the pig head, pig tail, and pig organs together to the helping Dog Egg and others." A few young people also hurriedly said, "Brother Taizhu, we don't mind. These are all good things, and there is still a lot of meat and oil on them. Big sister, cook, I'll give you meat. Uncle Zhong, you divide the meat." After handing the knife to Yang Yizhong, An Taizhu picked up half a fan of pork that had been divided and walked towards the location where the independent regiment was stationed, under the reluctant and envious gaze of the villagers. The villagers both feel foolish and admire his approach. On the other hand, Yang Yizhong, who took the knife, also said in a timely manner, "I believe you have all heard what Iron Pillar said before. This family is all kind-hearted and righteous. From now on, when you see Iron Pillar in the village, no one is allowed to call him Silly Pillar anymore. Wait for everyone to come, I'll cut the meat for you. There isn't much meat, so each family will share 1 pound first. If there is more, then leave it for the Iron Pillar. Do you feel embarrassed when someone works hard to start a wild boar and ends up leaving a pig leg?" The villagers who heard this did not feel that the village chief's approach was unfair. Being able to get a pound of meat is already considered a waste, and it's not even time to be happy. If you are too greedy, you will also be looked down upon by others. Nowadays, reputation is also very important. Leave the family matters to the village chief for handling, and he believes that this fair and just village chief will also handle the matter of dividing the meat well. As for Yang Taizhu himself, he carried half a fan of pork to the base of the independent regiment. The soldier who was originally training seemed somewhat surprised when he saw Yang Taizhu carrying pork into the camp, but more excited. You should know that villagers crave meat, and young soldiers do not want it. Upon learning the news, Kong Jia quickly walked out of the barracks. Seeing Yang Taizhu carrying pork, he unexpectedly and happily blurted out, "Silly Pillar, are you really willing to give us this meat? Who are you? You call me, what?" Yang Taizhu, carrying pork on his back, suddenly felt that he was not good when he heard Kong Jia call him silly. When he mentioned the nickname Silly Pillar, he remembered a TV drama he had watched before his time traveling, and that silly pillar made him want to take out a gun. Now Kong Jie gave himself such a nickname, or in other words, someone in the village had already called him that. But Yang Taizhu felt that calling him Iron Pillar or Pillar was also 100 times stronger than that foolish pillar. Looking at the black-faced Yang Taizhu, Kong Jie also felt a bit embarrassed and hurriedly said, "Taizhu, I'm sorry, I'm a rough guy. Don't mind. Do you really want to give us this pork? Farewell." Dad said, "You, good people, are heroes. You eat this meat, don't waste it." Just like the village chief before, Kong Jie felt uncomfortable listening to Yang Taizhu bouncing his words out intermittently. But he could understand the meaning behind the words to some extent. Being regarded as a hero by the common people is undoubtedly the best praise for them. Iron Pillar, then I will represent the soldiers of the independent regiment. Thank you for your kindness. Please rest assured with the whole village that our 8th Root Army Independent Regiment will definitely sacrifice our lives to fight against the little devils and protect our country as soon as possible to drive the invaders out of the country. Well, I don't understand what you're saying. But listen, it's comfortable. Here's the meat, I'll give it to you in the future. Throw the pork on your back to the 2 soldiers who have long been envious. The 2 soldiers who took over the pork instantly felt that this half of the pork was really heavy. Just thinking of what the soldier on guard said earlier, they came back directly carrying a wild boar. This half fan of pork may not be too heavy for Yang Taizhu. Yang Taizhu, who didn't speak to Kong Jiedwa and still pretended to be silly with a straight face, simply clenched his fists and said, "Goodbye. I want to go home and eat meat." Leaving behind such a sentence that made Kong Jie laugh and cry, Yang Taizhu strode away from the headquarters of the independent regiment. The chief of staff standing next to Kong Jie also sighed and said, "This Iron Pillar is not as foolish as the villagers say." According to village chief Yang, after his adoptive father passed away, this child was too sad and stayed alone in front of the grave for a few days. It is estimated that he was stimulated and his brain turned bright again. However, with his physique and strength, he would definitely be a good soldier if he joined the army. Seeing that Kong Jie had just received the meat sent by Yang Taizhu and wanted to keep the person, the chief of staff was speechless and said, "Captain, even if you want to recruit soldiers in Yang village, you may not be able to recruit him into the team. He's going to join the army, what will happen to his family?" "That's right. He's leaving, and the 5 underage children in his family are going to suffer. We can't do this. I really can't do it. Captain, I think it's better for you not to call him Silly Zhu in the future. I think this kid is quite good at holding grudges. Previously, when you called him Silly Zhu, he looked at your expression and wished he could take a bite of you." Kong Jie, who had been mocked, could only chuckle and say, "I made a slip of the tongue, this is not my old Kong. He's too straightforward." At present, there is no political commissar in the independent regiment, and the chief of staff also makes a guest appearance as a political commissar to some extent. Kong Jie would naturally listen to this old partner's words. Maintaining good military-civilian relations has always been the development principle of the 8th Root Army. If the 8th Root Army wants to survive and develop without the support of the people in deep enemy operations, the difficulty can be imagined. Taking the independent group stationed in Yang village as an example, if they want to remain stable in the village, they must also gain the support of the villagers. If there is really a conflict with the villagers, the independent group will probably feel unable to move even if they live in the village in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. A Little Devil Comes to the Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. A little devil comes to the village. Yang village, which has not heard the fragrance of meat for a long time, has several households tonight emitting the fragrance of meat. Although each family has a pound of meat, there are also many families who are reluctant to eat it and plan to marinate it and keep it for the Chinese New Year. The principle of diligence and frugality in household management is now understood by everyone in rural areas. On the contrary, it is the young Taizhu family who has lost their pillars, and the villagers were worried about what they would do in the future. At home, only a fool has grown up, while the rest are still half-grown children. But no one expected that a fool doesn't seem foolish, he knows hunting just like his father. Although most of the wild boars were sent out, the villagers must also remember this sentiment. At least in front of young Taizhu, no one should dare to call him silly Zhu again. Seeing off the village chief and others who were staying at home for dinner, Ong Xinghua looked a bit regretful and said, "Brother, it's a pity to send out those meats. It's okay. If you want to eat meat, you can eat it every day from now on. In the mountains, I also found many wild boars. When you want to eat meat, I will go to the mountains to harvest it. Share it with the villagers, and they will also remember our favor, understand?" Well, Dad used to say the same thing before. So what do you plan to do with the remaining pig legs? First, marinate it with salt, then chop some cypress branches and fumigate them for a longer period of time. The remaining pork ribs and meat will be frozen by digging up some snow tomorrow. When you want to eat them, go cut some, which should be enough for a few meals. Then we can eat meat every day. If we keep their mouths shut, how will we cook in the future? Seeing some overeating younger siblings, young Xinghua still felt a bit angry. Although she is not stingy, she seemed a bit impolite and immature when there were guests at home and her younger siblings were still eating so hard. Fortunately, she steamed a lot of steamed buns and stewed a lot of meat, so Yang Yizhong and others were also full. But young Xinghua felt that if the family continued to eat like this, no matter how much food they had, they might not be able to eat enough. As the saying goes, a half-grown boy eats a poor old man. Including my older brother, they are actually at an age where they can eat. In young Xinghua's opinion, it's okay for Big Brother to eat more, and the family still needs to rely on Big Brother to make a living. But she has 3 younger brothers and 4 younger sisters, so she can eat less. How much can the remaining 2 young siblings eat, even if they are allowed to eat openly? If we don't save some food, we won't be able to get enough food in the future. Do we really have to eat bran and swallow vegetables as a family? Upon hearing these words, young Taizhu comforted him directly, saying, "Sister, I know you care about food, but your body is more important than food. You, Akui, and Huaihua, even the 2 little ones, are all growing their bodies. If you can't even eat enough, how can you grow taller and stronger? Don't worry about the food, you have a brother. But you must also remember that food can be full, but it must not be wasted. Otherwise, you'll get beaten up." Well, brother, we remember. Fortunately, although these younger brothers and sisters are not very old, they are all quite sensible and obedient. When she rested at night, the youngest sister whispered, "Big brother, can I sleep with you?" "Xiao Xian, why do you want to sleep with Big Brother? Don't you want to sleep with your sisters?" "My second sister often snatches my blanket, and my third brother grinds his teeth while sleeping. I want to sleep with you, okay?" As the youngest child in the family, Ong Taizhu keenly noticed that although this girl was not very old, she was very intelligent. Stay with him clearly, she will be spoiled. Other siblings may not enjoy this kind of treatment. After thinking for a moment, young Taizhu nodded and said, "Okay, then Xiao Xian will sleep with Big Brother tonight." "Well, thank you, Big Brother." The joyful little girl, in just a few days, forgot the psychological shadow that this Big Brother had left on her before. What stored in her mind now are all pictures of her being spoiled by her older brother, making her wish she could hang on to him every day. On the other hand, young Taizhu has also considered giving an extra room to his older siblings to share and sleep in. Especially for the older sister who is already 15 years old, she can always consider getting married in this era. But as the eldest brother, he naturally didn't consider letting his younger sister marry early. Even if he wants to get married, he hopes that his eldest sister can wait until the end of the anti-Japanese war. At that time, the domestic situation was relatively peaceful, and married families had more security in their future lives. What surprised everyone was that just as Yang village fell into silence as usual, a group of devils dressed differently from ordinary little devils quietly appeared at the entrance of the village. If Yang Taizhu saw it, perhaps he could tell at a glance who these people were. Looking at the village not far ahead, the Japanese colonel in charge summoned his subordinates and said, "Attention, our current location is Yang village. The Xia Wan is still 2 kilometers away from here. Now I command." As the Japanese commander issued the order, the gathered subordinates instantly grasped the submachine gun hanging on their chest. From the unique equipment and attire of these Japanese soldiers, it can be seen that they are not an ordinary group of little devils. The Japanese colonel continued, "The first battle group is leading the way, the second group is responsible for covering, and the third group's guards are on guard. Quietly bypass this place and head straight to the headquarters of the 8th Route Army in Daxia Bay. Prepare for battle." Hi. Accompanied by a small team of about 10 people, they quickly walked towards the back of Yang village in the darkness. Even though these little devils are well trained, they can carry combat equipment and still make sounds while moving. The independent regimental soldiers responsible for night duty soon realized something was wrong. When he saw clearly that the person was wearing strange clothing and carrying a weapon, he immediately pulled the bolt and stood up to ask, "Who?" the command. At the same time as questioning, the sentry wisely chose to shoot as a warning. With the sound of gunfire, Ong Taizhu, who was not far from the sentry's position, was instantly awakened from his dream. Not only did he wake up, but the independent regimental officers and soldiers who were originally sleeping in the barracks also instantly woke up. Upon hearing the intense gunfire coming from outside and seeing the awakened little sister, Ong Taizhu quickly put on his clothes, picked up the little sister with a blanket, and handed her over to Yang Xinghua, who was also awakened. Quickly said, "There should be some little devils in the village. Take your younger brother and sister to the cellar I dug before and hide. Remember, I haven't come back, you must all hide in the cellar. Put on the quilt, cotton clothes, and pants." "Brother, how could there be little devils in our village? Who knows? Time is tight, I can't tell you more. Remember, take your younger brother and sister to hide, I'll be back soon." Leaving behind such a sentence, Yang Taizhu immediately rushed out of the house. Seeing the independent soldiers fighting fiercely with the little devils not far ahead, he also knew that the battle had reached its most critical and dangerous moment. Facing the falling independent soldiers, Yang Taizhu, holding a rifle and moving forward with a cat waist, quickly aimed his gun at the little devil who was desperately shooting. With the sound of gunfire, the little devil instantly fell to the ground. Ba ga. There are enemies in the direction of 8 o'clock, counterattack. But when the little devils discovered that the enemy shooting in the 8 o'clock direction had exceeded the range of their submachine guns, Yang Taizhu did not hesitate, but continued to focus and aim at a little devil, pulling the trigger in his hand again. The soldier from the independent regiment's 2nd battalion, who was blocking, also said in surprise, "Captain, who fired the gun behind us? This shot is so accurate. I saw him shoot 2 little devils with just 2 shots earlier. Who is it?" "You ask me, who am I going to ask? Whoever it is, we must keep these little devils and continue to beat me hard." At the same time, the 2nd battalion closest to the battlefield arrived first. The Japanese colonel, who noticed that the situation was not good, quickly ordered the other 2 combat teams to provide cover for the first team, and they planned to withdraw from the battle. But for the officers and soldiers of the independent regiment's 2nd battalion, a brief confrontation resulted in heavy losses for them. How could they allow the little devils to escape at such times? With a company commander ordering a pursuit, dozens of soldiers rushed out. Seeing this scene, Yang Taizhu, who was constantly hunting down the little devils, could only loudly say, "Stop, don't chase." Before the words could be finished, dozens of soldiers rushed out and were frantically shot by the little devils. Dozens of submachine guns were used to gather fire and sweep, resulting in a killing area and power that can be imagined. In an instant, these fearless warriors collapsed into a pool of blood. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Counting your fast running. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Counting your fast running. In the era of war and chaos, when asked what ordinary people are most afraid of, it is certain that gunfire ranks high. For unarmed civilians, when they encounter someone with a gun in their hand, they feel scared and feel that their life is not guaranteed. Previously, the independent regiment was stationed in Yang village, and some villagers in the village also felt scared. After some time of contact, they found that the 8th Route Army was very different from the armies they had previously encountered. Gradually, the villagers let go of their guard and felt that they could finally sleep soundly at night. With the presence of officers and soldiers from the independent regiment, bandits probably wouldn't dare to enter the village and rob homes. The sudden sound of gunfire at night still woke countless villagers from their slumber. Similar to Yang Taizhu, it is actually quite common for family members to hide in the cellar. But in Yang Tieju's view, hiding in the cellar would be of no use if there were to be a sneak attack or a strong attack from the little devils. Ultimately, to defeat the invading enemy and let them know they dare to enter the village, they must pay the price of bleeding. Watching the soldiers of the independent regiment's 2nd Battalion lying on the charging road, Yang Taizhu, whose iron-blooded battle soul had awakened, couldn't help but shout, "Little devil, grass is so damn. I want to run after fighting, dream." At the same time as shouting these words, Yang Taizhu stopped the soldiers who were still preparing to charge out and said, "Get on my back, these little devils are not easy. If you continue to charge like this, you will only die in vain. Who are you? Why do you care about me? Lousy Yang Taizhu, it was me who killed 2 little devils before. If you don't accept it, hold it back for me. Hurry up and rescue the wounded. I have more ways than you to pursue the little devils. Do you have a grenade?" The roared soldier paused for a few moments and said, "Yes." "What do you want a grenade for?" "Of course it's used to bomb the devils." "Hurry up. If you don't chase after them, these little devils will really run away." After speaking, Yang Taizhu snatched several hand grenades from the soldier's hand and hung them directly around his waist. Then carrying a gun, he quickly charged out. Not long after he rushed out, Kong Jia also led a large army to arrive. Seeing the remaining soldiers of the 2nd Battalion, Kong Jia was also very angry and said, "2nd Battalion Commander, what's going on?" "Captain, I don't know exactly what the situation is. These little devils are very evil. With automatic firearms in one water, not to mention the thieves they shoot, the grenades they throw are like handguns. My 2 platoons have been disabled by the little devils. What are you still doing here? Why don't you bring someone to chase me?" At this very moment, a surviving platoon leader approached and said, "Captain, I have something to report." "Speak up." Just now, the silly pillar in the village had already caught up. If it weren't for his help, we would have suffered even more casualties. We fought for a long time and not a single Japanese soldier was injured. He fired 2 shots and killed 2 little Japanese soldiers. Who? Stupid Jew, are you sure it's stupid Jew? Sure. Captain, I don't think he's foolish and ferocious. He asked me for a few grenades and chased after me. Oh, he also said these devils are not easy, let's not blindly pursue them. Previously, the commander of the 5th Company ordered a charge, but was counterattacked by the Japanese and half of the company's soldiers were all killed. When Wu Yen rushed out, silly Zhu shouted not to chase. But we didn't listen, and the result turned out to be what we are now. After listening to the platoon leader's report, Kong Jia was afraid of suppressing countless anger in his heart, but he still said, "Where is the devil who was killed by him?" "The body was snatched away by the little devils." "Captain, I have never seen these devils before. They dress differently from ordinary devils. The helmets they wear on their heads do not reflect light, and the 3 of them alternate to cover the attack and retreat. They fought in perfect harmony. Although the situation reported by the platoon leader was somewhat demoralizing, Kong Jie still shouted, "Captain! Arrive! Take the regimental guard platoon with you, and pick a few good players from your camp to continue chasing me. Anyway, I must know where these damn devils came from and what's the difference." "Yes, Captain." Accompanied by a battalion commander leading a guard platoon and following the elite of a battalion, they pursued along the retreat route of the Little Devils. Young Taizhu, who had already bitten the Yamamoto Special Agent team, did not shoot to disturb the rapidly evacuating Little Devils, but instead took a detour to the mountain pass ahead. After occupying favorable terrain, set up the crooked handlebar machine gun directly and aimed the muzzle at the mountain road below. Just as the Yamamoto Special Agents were evacuating to the foot of the mountain, Ong Taizhu quickly pulled the trigger and fired 30 machine gun bullets, which were then fired in an instant. Enemy attack. Conceal. Counterattack. Yamamoto Ichiki, who was in the team, was also caught off guard by a sudden machine gun fire. Seeing 3 agents under his command fall, his anger can be imagined. But after looking at the terrain, he indeed ordered a retreat. On the other hand, Yang Taizhu, who fired all the machine gun bullets, directly stored the gun in the storage space and took out the rifle to transfer the shooting position. During the transfer process, take out the grenade that was previously asked for by the independent regiment soldiers, pull it out and forcefully throw it out. As he shifted his shooting position, Yamamoto's agents also began shooting with guns. Countless bullets hit the temporary position he had chosen before. Unfortunately, he had already shifted his position before the Yamamoto Special Agents counterattacked. Facing the Little Devils 100 meters away, Ong Taizhu ran and threw them, accompanied by grenades falling from the sky. Yamamoto Ichiki, who had sharp eyes, quickly said, "There's a grenade. Conceal, scatter." As the words fell, hand grenades fell from the sky. There were 2 hand grenades that exploded directly into the air. Accompanied by the sound of grenade explosions and the sound of gunfire on the move. Every time gunshots sound, one of Yamamoto's agents is killed. Ba ga. What kind of person is that on the mountain top? Why is the marksmanship so powerful? The back team moves forward, disengages, withdraws. Hi. The Yamamoto Special Agents team, who were beaten up, although very unwilling. Faced with opponents who possess terrain advantages and possess excellent marksmanship and agility, they also know that staying here is likely to be surrounded by the pursuing 8th Route Army. In fact, the commander of a battalion leading the Independent Regiment Guard platoon, upon hearing gunshots and explosions, immediately looked excited and said, "Comrades, the Little Devils are right ahead. Accelerate your steps, we must not let the Little Devils escape." Faced with the Yamamoto Special Forces team retreating while fighting, Ong Taizhu still adopted forward shooting, hunting and killing the Little Devils exposed at the muzzle. Most of the Special Operations team members who were shot were hit with a big hole in their head or chest, and Yamamoto Ichiki was also very puzzled. "Baga, what kind of bullet is this? Why is it so powerful?" If Yang Taizhu heard his doubts in his heart, he would definitely say, "This is a damn bullet, specially prepared for you." After firing 5 bullets from a gun, he would switch to another gun and continue chasing the Little Devils who quickly escaped the battle. Unlike before at the entrance of the village, the Yamamoto Special Forces team still managed to retrieve 2 corpses. This time, they wished they had 2 extra legs to run quickly. When Yang Taizhu rushed down the mountain slope, Yamamoto Ichiki and his surviving special agents had already run out of sight. Knowing that it would be difficult to continue pursuing, Ong Taizhu could only be unwilling to stay in place. "Yamamoto Ichiki, you're running fast. When we meet again next time, all of you are ready to stay." While secretly thinking in his heart, he also began to clean up the battlefield. Especially when he saw the independent regiment soldiers running quickly not far away, he knew he needed to quickly challenge Li Pin. To hide these good things, he naturally needs to clean the battlefield first. Windshield helmet, bulletproof vest, grenade, German MP-38 submachine gun. Yang Taizhu, who picked up a submachine gun, muttered to himself, the German army has just equipped this gun. It's not easy for Yamamoto Ichiki to get it. At the same time, he sighed and directly stored the submachine gun in the storage space. In addition, he stripped 4 sets of combat equipment from the killed agents and searched for the remaining bullets from the Japanese. When a battalion commander arrived and saw Yang Taizhu cleaning the battlefield, he looked a bit confused and said, "Silly pillar. Did you kill all these devils? Where did the other devils go?" Seeing that Yang Taizhu remained silent, a battalion commander quickly approached and said, "Silly pillar, why don't you talk to anyone?" "Me, Yang Taizhu." "No, silly pillar." Looking at Yang Taizhu with a face full of anger, the battalion commander knew he had said the wrong thing. He quickly apologized and only then did he learn from Yang Taizhu that more than 20 little devils had escaped. Continuing to pursue now may not make much sense either. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I see he's a noodle ball. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I see he's a noodle ball. Kong Jia, who stayed in the village to handle the aftermath, watched the casualties reported by the chief of staff, and the 2nd Battalion suffered heavy losses. Knowing that this sudden encounter may result in severe punishment for him, he is still waiting for news from the battalion commander. Considering that the headquarters is located only 2 kilometers away from Yang village in Daxia Bay, he immediately sent someone to report to the headquarters. The chief of staff, who had cleaned up the battlefield, also knew that this encounter was a disastrous defeat for the independent regiment. Watching the explosions and gunshots coming from afar, the 2 people standing at the village entrance both agreed and said, "It seems that silly pillar and the little devils have caught fire. I just don't know if the 1st Battalion commander and they can reinforce in time. I hope you can come soon. If those little devils are really elite, it may be difficult to stop them." "Yeah. Now I just want to know if a battalion commander can bring back a corpse of a devil. With a corpse, at least let me know what kind of bullshit devil I lost to. Otherwise, I always feel like I lost unjustly." While the 2 were discussing, after nearly an hour, they finally saw the returning battalion commander. Seeing the body carried by the soldiers, Kong Jia and the chief of staff were still startled, thinking it was the body of the pursuer. As soon as the battalion commander came running over, he gasped and said, "Captain, chief of staff, I'm back. That group of devils ran too fast and we couldn't catch up. However, these little devils were dealt a fierce blow by stupid pillar, oh iron pillar. What about others?" "In the back. Captain, Iron Pillar is really impressive. With 1 gun per person, he managed to kill 12 little devils. Also, these devils are really extraordinary. I have brought back all the corpses, but Captain can take a look later." "Okay. I want to see what kind of little devil this is." Accompanied by the corpses of 12 little devils, all were placed at the headquarters of the independent regiment. Looking at the group of devils dressed up strangely, Kong Jia finally understood why the previous platoon leader said that this was a little devil that the group had never seen before. After inspecting the bodies of the little devils, Kong Jia also said sincerely, "Iron Pillar, on behalf of the soldiers who sacrificed their lives in the independent regiment, thank you for avenging them. Speaking of which, it's also because my regimental leader was too incompetent to kill those little devils." Faced with Kong Jia's sincere gratitude, Yang Taizhu shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, little devil. There are many people, and I can't stop them. Let them run away, a lot. Little devil, damn it, scared me, little brother and sister, damn it." When these words were spoken, Kong Jia, along with the chief of staff, a battalion commander, and others, were somewhat amused. "I'm afraid these devils would never have imagined that just because they appeared, they scared Yang Tieju's younger brother and sister, and they were so ruthless. But they all know that if it weren't for Yang Tieju's action tonight to kill these little devils and let them know what the difference is between these little devils, So this time, I'm afraid the independent team has really lost face. The headquarters of the 8th Root Army, which could be awakened by the alarm, heard the reporter's report and the CEO angrily said, "What main force, fart, I think he is a do 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 do. Do 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 do. Such a leader is only responsible for feeding livestock. Go, get rid of that regimental leader for me. Yes. Removing Kong Jia, the leader of the independent regiment, certainly made the CEO feel a bit relieved. The CEO is very clear that even if the team leader is removed, a new team leader will be appointed. In this situation, Li Yunlong, who is good at training and fighting, was remembered by the CEO. Regarding what happened at the headquarters, neither Kong Jia nor Yang Taizhu, who were staying in Yang village, were clear about it. Even if Yang Taizhu knew that according to the development of the plot, Li Yunlong, as the protagonist of time and space, would soon become the new leader of the independent group. But at this moment, he looked at Kong Jia's expression and said seriously, "This gun, mine, the rest, yours, is it okay?" Holding the submachine gun that was intentionally shown in his hand, Yang Taizhu also seriously negotiated with Kong Jia. In fact, besides the submachine gun and 6 grenades he held in his arms, he also had a lot of storage space hidden in advance. Seeing Yang Taizhu's expression so serious, Kong Jia also knew that he had indeed taken away the submachine gun he had seized, so this guy would definitely go berserk. Furthermore, these 12 little devils were all killed by others, and these weapons should have been his spoils of war. If Yang Taizhu is a soldier of the independent regiment, then the capture will definitely be returned to the public. The problem is, Yang Taizhu is not even a soldier under his command. They killed so many little devils, leaving their bodies and many weapons for them. Thinking of this, Kong Jia also said happily, "Cheng. This is your weapon, you can keep it if you want." "Thank you, Captain. You are a good person. I want to go home. My younger brother and sister will worry." "Okay, then you go home first. If there's any situation later, we'll contact you again. Tonight, thank you." "Thank you, killing the devils is so satisfying." The sentence, "kill the devils, it's so satisfying," once again made Kong Jia and others laugh and cry. You can see Yang Taizhu leaving with a rifle on his back and a submachine gun in his arms. The soldiers of the independent regiment no longer see him as a fool when they look at him. If these people are fools, then what are they? Soldiers admire the strong. And tonight, Yang Taizhu is the strong one. While Kong Jia continued to send people, carrying a set of small Japanese weapons and equipment, to report the situation to the headquarters. The communication officer sent by the headquarters to convey the order also issued an order to dismiss Kong Jia from his position as regimental leader. Even though some soldiers may think it's unfair, Kong Jia said seriously, "As a regimental leader, shouldn't we be punished after losing a battle? As a soldier, we must always remember, obey orders, obey commands, remember." "Yes, Captain." Kong Jia, who has not yet taken office as the new commander and has not yet handed over his work, naturally needs to ensure the stability of the army. Just lost the battle, the morale of the troops have been severely damaged, and he doesn't want any new problems to arise in the troops at this time. On the other hand, when Yang Taizhu returned home, he shouted out his younger brother and sister who were hiding in the cellar. Seeing her elder brother returning safely, her younger sister Yang Xinghua also looked concerned and said, "Big brother, are you okay? Was it the little devil who just shot?" Just a small group of devils, they were beaten away by the big brother. "It's okay now, you can all go back to your room and sleep with peace of mind." "Big brother, can I sleep with you too? I'm also a bit scared." Seeing the youngest sister, Yang Tinyu immediately hid in the arms of his elder brother. As the fifth younger brother, he also felt the most secure staying by his side at this moment. Faced with the fearful expressions of his younger siblings, Yang Taizhu also felt uneasy in his heart. Then he said, "Okay, I'll sleep on the big con with you later. Don't be afraid now, right?" With big brother around, we're not afraid. It is not difficult to tell from what they said that they have a deep dependence on this big brother. Having an older brother by their side makes them feel more secure. To some extent, Yang Taizhu also began to play the role of his previous adoptive father. The bosses who made the decision to replace the position of the leader of the independent regiment overnight, while preparing to end the meeting, heard that the independent regiment had sent a new correspondent with the latest information about the group of little devils. For a moment, the bosses also showed a hint of interest. Seeing the weapons and equipment placed on the table, the CEO was curious and said, "These equipment are the ones worn by the little devils who ambushed your regiment. I don't think there's anything unusual about this equipment either. Chief, this helmet doesn't reflect light, this vest can withstand bullets, and this submachine gun. All the little devils are wearing these equipment. This kind of little devil, our regimental leader has never seen before." Just as the CEO was preparing to provoke questioning, the chief of staff said, "Boss, it seems that these little devils are really not simple. These submachine guns are not produced by the devils, they should be German weapons, and they have just been installed in the German army. Oh, does this submachine gun still have a reputation? I think it's necessary to have the commander of the 386th Brigade personally go to Yang village to inspect the bodies of those little devils. Also, if I heard you right, you didn't kill those 12 little devils just now." "Yes, Chief. He's a fool stationed in Yang village, not right. He used to be a fool, but now he doesn't seem to be foolish anymore. That guy is very powerful. With just one gun and a few grenades, he managed to kill so many little devils." As soon as he finished speaking, the CEO couldn't help but rage again and said, "Are you still a soldier? You can't say that a main force can't keep a little devil, but a fool managed to beat up these little devils and run away in embarrassment." The reprimanded correspondent also felt ashamed. But reality is in front of him, and he can't find a reason to refute it. End of this chapter.